My name is Jeffrey St Laurent. This is the Live Tuesday call. It is Halloween, so I'm excited for that. And we've got a lot of great stuff going on with selling coaching, and hopefully you've got a lot of great stuff going on with your coaching business. If not, my goal and what I do is I help coaches transition to a full-time business, and maybe this call, whether you're listening to this live or the recording, will kind of give you that jump start with some great education to help you figure it out a little bit better. Like I just said, we do record these calls, we and all my staff. So anyways, they are posted on my website, sellingcoaching.com, under the university, so go ahead and check that out. I also have a great private Facebook group at sellingcoaching.com. At the top of every page, there's a little link that says, hey, join my private Facebook group. So you can definitely check that out. It's a place where we can interact a lot more. And then also there's a great opportunity for you to be able to speak your voice and share some of the things and the education stuff that you do as well. We got a great group of coaches there. And right on the homepage at sellingcoaching.com, I have a fantastic resource for you. I bribe you with my dog, if you will, but it's called the Ultimate Startup Guide for New Coaches. So fantastic information in there. That's actually an audio and a written resource, like a PDF attached with that as well. So please check that out on my homepage. And then lastly, if you're in a position where you're thinking, oh, I need some help with this stuff, or there's too much, I can't figure it out, I'm overwhelmed, or maybe you're just already doing well and you want to kind of like shorten that exponential learning curve, consider mentor coaching with me. I do one-on-one, and I also do some small groups. So you can always go to sellingcoaching.com. On the Work With Me page, at the bottom, there's a form there. You can fill that out. That comes directly to me, and then I'll follow up. We can create a relaxed conversation and see where we can go. With that being said, a lot of great stuff on the call. We had today's topic is the power of live events in order to get clients. So of course, that is the goal, is to get paying clients. We want a full-time coaching business, which doesn't mean full-time like time-wise, meaning, oh, I'm working full-time 40 hours a week, because as an entrepreneur, we get paid for results, not time. So it doesn't, regardless of the actual amount of time you work in, to me, full-time would mean that I'm earning a full-time income. At least that's my goal as I help you with that. And so we talk about live events today, and I did live events for 15 plus years or so, in all different capacities. And when I say I did live events, it's not that I wouldn't do live events again. It's just I just transitioned to a 100% virtual business as I worked with coaches to transition them to full time. Mostly, I didn't want to travel anymore. I was done being away from my son and missing out time, and so I chose to create that transition. So with that being said, having done live events for 15 plus years, and every now and then I crave to do a live event, but I will say unequivocally that is the best way to get new coaching clients. Obviously, grow your audience and get new coaching clients. And when I say those two things, grow your audience and get new coaching clients, that's the name of the game, right? The name of the game in terms of your coaching business, as I always tell my mentoring clients, is like, we're growing an audience. That is our deal. Like that is your business. So when someone says, hey, I've got to grow my business, to me, that doesn't mean, oh, I'm growing my revenue. Of course, yeah, I want to grow my revenue. But when I think about growing my business, that means I'm growing my audience. I'm growing the amount of people that are within my circle, on my email community, in my private Facebook group, for instance. Those are the two places that I reside. So they're subscribed, they're on there, or they're hopefully in my Facebook group at least at a minimum. And so I can communicate with them on a regular basis. The more I have of those people, and the longer they stay and the more they become fans, that is what I mean by growing my audience. And that's what I want from you. So when I say live events, it's a fantastic way to grow your audience and get paying clients. Well, that's the other end of it, right? So we got to grow our audience. We got to nurture our audience. We've got to educate them and stay in front of them. That's like things like that I'm doing right now with my Live Tuesday call. And then obviously from there, it's how do we monetize it? And in this case, I always tell people as we start off with coaching clients, right? And so I'm going to go into the logistics of some events and some more of the detailed stuff. But I always like to start off on a larger level, because when I mentor people, when I teach on these calls and things like that, I really want to make sure I teach you the why from a larger level and also down to a smaller level. As an entrepreneur, what I understood is when I became more effective is when I understood why I was going to do something or why I should be doing something, not just oh, I've got to do this. I've got to do X, Y, and Z. And sometimes I would do X, Y, and Z, and I have no clue why I'm doing them, but I would do them. But then also, what's hard is if you don't understand why you're doing it and why it's supposed to work and why it's supposed to happen a certain way, then when it becomes challenging or slow or hard, you get really, or I got very demotivated to do it because I'm just like, this is stupid. It doesn't work. Right? But once I started to understand the why behind it, then I was like, oh, okay, well, this is supposed to take time. Or, okay, even if this isn't working this time, I'm going to keep doing it because I understand the why. And so from a larger scale, so pulling it away from live events, and we talk about, okay, growing an audience, and I said, grow the audience, nurture those people, and then we can monetize it through paying clients. We got to think about the product that we're talking about here, or let me rephrase that, the service that we're selling is coaching, right? That's a service. That's our number one and most likely our premium product when we're starting off, and most likely our only product when we're starting off. So this coaching is a service that, as we know, people need to experience. They don't know what coaching is. They are only guessing what it is. And even if they had a coach before, which most people haven't, but even if they have had a coach before, everyone's different, right? Everyone has a different style, and hopefully you have a unique style and you would be a great fit for that person. But remember, coaching is an experiential product. Meaning when in order for people to really understand the value of coaching, they need to be able to experience it. And they really can't experience the value of coaching unless they've got something going on that they need help with, or more importantly, that they need help with, they want help with, and they're seeking help with. And then more importantly, the timing of them doing something like that is right now, meaning like I'm urgent. I need to take care of this right now. And that's why I relate everything back to selling as I help coaches transition to full time. Is I always help them with the selling aspects of it, right? And that's the need, the timing, and then are they looking to get some help on this, such as with a coach. So with that being said, when we think about how people hire us, that's that nurturing aspect of our audience. Once we get them, we've got to nurture them. And then we nurture them, we stay in front of them, we do educational calls, things like this as an example. Whatever, you make blog posts, maybe you're writing, maybe you're doing a podcast, whatever you're doing to stay in front of them. All right, what happens is that begins to build value for what you do as a coach, meaning your coaching services. And if you've noticed, I've said that word value a few times. I mean, it's building value. Everything, any monetary exchange, meaning when someone buys something, or on the other end, if someone's selling something, the only way someone's going to buy it from you is when they see value for it. So a lot of coaches make the mistake of trying to sell coaching directly. Like you go to their website and it's like, hey, here's a free session, and hey, here, coaching is awesome because it's objective and it's not judgmental, and they kind of talk about all these cool things and why coaching is different from, let's say, therapy or whatever, right? And those are the logistics of coaching, but it doesn't make someone go, oh my God, I need a coach. So what happens is how do they begin to see value in coaching? That's through as we begin to educate them. And that's why I like to do these calls. For instance, that's why I always recommend when I work with my clients, I help them create a marketing structure and create weekly education, right? So they can be in front of their audience on a regular basis and begin to nurture that. But what that does is that builds credibility, it builds trust, it builds rapport. As people become fans of yours and you're in front of them, you get their attention. And not everything gets their attention, right? Not everyone's on my Tuesday calls, right? And some people come on, some people come off, right? And it's really dependent upon time and also, more importantly, topic and what's relevant for them or not. But either way, I'm in front of those people, right? And like I said, that begins to build that relationship, and it starts to also build value for what you do. So what I'm going over here is, when I think about live events, is how do people buy our coaching services, right? They've got to get in that position where I say need, timing, and then be considering someone like us. But then they've also got to trust us. They've got to have rapport with us. They've got to see us as the expert. More importantly, they've got to be able to see us as a person who, wow, this person understands me. This person can help me. That's why as I help coaches, the first thing I'll do with you, if you were to hire me, is I'm going to say, well, hey, who do you help with what specifically? Other than, figuring out what type of business model you want to have and so forth and so on, I'm going to help you figure out who you help with what specifically. And what that's going to do is that's going to now target your message towards those people, right? And so when you target the message towards the people, this goes back to everything I just said, they begin to listen to it, watch it, read it, consume it, and they go, wow, this person knows me, they understand me, they're helping me. right? All that education, that's education-based marketing, right? This call, I'm educating you, but it's marketing. But I'm not saying, hey, hire me as a coach. Yeah, I mentioned that as a mentor coach. I want to make you aware of what I do, things like that. But then I'm educating you guys, right? I'm educating you, and that's education-based marketing, as I like to call it. So we're beginning to do that. And they begin to see value in what you do. And now what happens is as they listen, just like you might be listening to this call, maybe to the recording or live, and as you listen to it more and more, if you haven't already, you might be thinking, depending on where you are with timing and need, you might be thinking, oh, geez, you know what? Jeff could really help me with this. Geez, if I worked with Jeff or I hired Jeff, maybe he could help me with this. Or after listening to him, I know he could help me with this, right? And so that's what your audience is going to begin to do. And this is creating that buying process for them because or at least it's making it possible for them because it's building value and they start to understand, they know you can understand them, they know you can help them. Now, let me go to live events. I took some time for that so you can understand how we bring the people in, and then not how necessarily, but once we bring them in, how to nurture them and what that nurturing does in terms of creating that community, trust, rapport, value, and then if and when the timing's right, they're much more likely to reach out and or create a conversation from there, which can lead to coaching clients. Now, the great thing about live events, right? I said rewind back to the beginning. As I said, live events, they are unequivocally the best way to get new coaching clients. So that timetable that I just described of getting someone into your audience and then building rapport with them, I can't give you how long that timetable is in terms of how long someone's going to be in your audience before they hire you, right? And maybe they'll never hire you, right? But either way, there's a certain cycle that people go through, and that cycle really is dependent upon, like I said, the timing of the need that they have. Everyone has some type of need. If you have your headline, like mine, helping who with what specifically, helping coaches transition to a full-time business, if they're clicking and they're joining my email list or my Facebook group, etc., one would assume that they're somewhere in that process of maybe thinking, considering, and or starting and or doing a coaching business, anywhere up to no time to full-time, right? So it qualifies them to a certain degree, right? So with that being said, we have to start to realize is that where they are in that buying cycle is always a matter of just the timing of when that need is now. So how long they're going to be in your audience before, if at all, they hire you is really dependent on that. But with that being said, what happens is when you go to a live event, as I said, it's the best way, is because it cuts that time down to like right now. In other words, if I'm going to get face-to-face in front of people, what I've seen is, and this is having doing it both ways, and now, like I said, I did the live events for 15 plus years, and now I've been doing 100% virtual for 2.5 years plus, right? And it's not like I didn't do virtual before. I did conference calls before, things like that, but never as consistently as I'm doing them now because I was more face-to-face. And having seen the difference between the two, my ability to get clients now was much quicker and more immediate with face-to-face versus the virtual, right? And I'm not saying the virtual doesn't work. Obviously, it's working because I'm doing it, and it works very well. There's something about a live event that makes it kind of warps that process of building connection, rapport, credibility. Someone is in front of you going, wow, this person understands me. They know what they're doing, right? And so that's what I found is all that stuff I was mentioning before of what we do through our virtual communications once they're in our audience. It's almost just like that live event puts them in this like time capsule, and it just, I don't know, you get my point, right? And it warps the process forward when they come out the other end at the end of the 60 minutes or hour or however long your live event is. In a lot of cases, like I recommend, like free events, 30 to 60 minute events, local, simple, complimentary events. But it puts them in a time capsule and they walk out on the other side, 45 minutes later, and all of a sudden you can walk away with 1 or 2 clients, depending on, who's in the room, et cetera. And that's a pretty cool thing. And so I wanted to kind of describe that process so you understand why the live events is so powerful, and also what's happening while you're doing that. I remember when I was doing live events early on, I didn't realize the power in terms of what's happening with these people in the audience. And when you start to understand the things that I'm talking about, not just from listening to me here, because you can listen to it and go, oh yeah, that makes sense. right? Because there's something about being face to face with someone in the room. There's a different energy. Like, in other words, right now we're on the phone and each of you are in your own places, and who knows, you're on mute and you're, you're cleaning something, or you're folding laundry, or who knows what you're doing, right? Or maybe you're just sitting there listening like a good student. But either way, if I had all of you in the room with me face to face, it would just be a completely different energy that we can't describe, right? And from there, there's post event interaction, and that's where we can find out more about those people and what's going on, and you can create a strong conversation, and you can get through what I would call the pre-qualifying process pretty quickly with people in a live event, because you're reading so much more than just words and hesitations and pauses, etc. You're just reading body language and energy and language as well. So there's a lot more to it when you're face to face. You can see people writing notes while you're talking. You can see people, how engaged they are, if they're looking at a PowerPoint, etc. If they're asking questions, if they're engaged, where they're sitting in the room, how they're participating or not. There's a lot of things you can gauge in that process as you go through with live events. So I want you to realize, that's when I say the power of a live event, I want it to take a little bit of time in the beginning to really show you that, so you can really understand that and why it's so powerful. So if I were to go into kind of like, let's get into some logistical things, so you can start to see like what I mean by this. And when I say live events, there's something, at least in my head, that I always used to think about, wow, a live event, and I used to think like, oh, I'm gonna get a stage, I'm gonna rent out a hotel room, not a hotel room, but a conference room in a hotel, or I'm gonna have this big event and I have all these people there, and I'm gonna plan it out for 2 months from now, and I'm gonna fill the seats and I'm gonna charge, and you can do that stuff, but the reality is, after doing events for a while, like what I realized is that there's two types of events. There's events where you host them, you have a space, whether you pay for it or it's free, and you put people in the seats. Then there's the other event. The other type of event is where someone already has an audience that wants you to speak to that audience, and you show up and the audience is there and the space is there and you speak, right? So of the two, obviously the second one sounds probably a lot more appealing, and yes, it is a lot more appealing, and that's what absolutely I would recommend, because the first one, where you have to find a space and you got to put people in the seats, that is always and always will be the biggest challenge of live events, is you hosting the live events. Now, the reality is as well, most coaches are starting off, or even if you've been doing it for a little while, the reality is you don't have much, if any, audience. Rewind back to the beginning of the call today, and I said what? Right? Our number one goal is to build an audience. That's why, especially if you're starting off, I always recommend doing just one-on-one coaching as your number one, if and only product, service, in other words, that you're selling. Because what are you going to create? A book or a course or something like that you're going to sell for 20, 50, 200 bucks? Who are you going to sell it to? You don't have anybody. You know what I mean? Now, if you're doing live events, I would absolutely recommend doing like a book, especially, or doing a lot of live events, or a physical course, or a course that you can sell, absolutely, for live events. But otherwise, what I'd say is I'm always starting off with one-on-one coaching, and the point of that is because you don't have an audience, right? So you have no one to sell it to, if you've got all the other products. So the point is we do the events to build the audience, and then hopefully from there we can grab a couple or a handful of clients depending on the size of the audience. But either way, so starting off is I would much rather, instead of filling the room with people that I don't have and don't know yet, which is really hard, I would rather do events where I can show up at a place and everything's ready to go and I just show up and I do my thing. So with that being said, like I said, when I think of live events, I want you to simplify it. I'm going to simplify it for you and keep it simple in the sense of saying, I want you to think about speaking this week, right? So I do these live Tuesday calls. It's Tuesday. It's the beginning of the week. Like literally, I want you to be able to like get off the phone from this if you're listening to it live, and wherever you are in the week, and try and set something up for a couple days from now, or by the end of the week, or even next week. Especially if it's a place where, like I said, people are always going to be there, right? And so I want these events to be quick, simple, free. I'm not discouraging you charging for events, but what I'm saying is like, hey, you know what? Like I did stuff for my realtors. People, not even my realtor, I had a realtor, but it's people that I knew from the gym. I used to do fitness training, health and fitness, teach group fitness, personal training. So it's just like I talked to some of my clients and people that I knew, realtors, insurance agents, dentists, just local community business owners, obviously health club owners, people that I knew and didn't know in the community, but I would either be connected to them through a friend or know somebody or just approach them. And wondering is like, hey, do you ever do live events? Do you ever do events for your employees, for your customers, right? Whoever they have, if they have some type of an audience, if they've got some type of a meeting room, conference room. Like I said, I did stuff in health clubs, like in group fitness rooms, or even just on the side of the floor, like well, the ab stuff is, the ab mats and stuff. They had some folding chairs or some office chairs, and we'd pull out 10 or 15 of them, and we'd have a little seminar in the corner. And was it loud and like were there a bunch of people around? Yeah, but you know what? It worked because what mattered was I was in front of people speaking my message. And that's the whole goal here is I want you in front of people speaking your message. So I want you to think of casual, quick, 30 to 60 minutes, no longer than that. So anything longer than that, that's when I would want to start charging, because now you're getting into a lot more in-depth content. If you're doing a 90-minute event, it's much more of a time commitment, and it's also now it's something that you're getting more in depth, and you can do a lot more things in a 90-minute event. 60 minutes obviously is plenty of time. You can even get a lot done in 30 minutes. Look what I can get done right here. I talked to you guys for about 5-10 minutes at the beginning of the call. I have about 5-10 minutes at the end of the call. I got about 40 minutes or so of content. I can get out a lot of content in a short amount of time, and it's a free event, right? So if I was doing this live and I were to get in front of coaches, obviously I have a niche, so that's my headline. That's who I want to speak in front of. Obviously, that's an important thing to consider when we're doing these. So if when I say realtors or things like that, I mean, that's before I really even had a niche. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, right? I was just like, I want to get in front of people and speak. I didn't even know what I was speaking on. It was personal development. It was, mindset and all that good stuff, because I was just ambitious and loved coaching, and I want to inspire and change people's lives, right? So whether you're like that, that's where you can just kind of get out there and speak. But on the other end, if you have a more specific niche, like helping coaches transition to a full-time business, whatever, right? Now you got to look and say like, okay, if I'm going to do live events, where can I do those live events? Where are those people? What groups do they already have? Where are they getting in front? How can I get in front of those people? Who already has an audience of those people that I can kind of connect with or hook up with, and then maybe wants to put an event on, or maybe we're doing a mutual event. So I'm just throwing some fast ideas at you. I want you to get in front of those people. Meetup.com, great platform. A lot of my clients have used that as a great way of just getting started. And I will tell you though, it's the double-edged sword, so to speak, with Meetup, and it's a good thing. But in other words, it's a great way to, especially if you don't have an audience, it's a great way to kind of get in front of people, to set up a live event. Again, this is one that you're kind of inviting people, but you're using the platform of Meetup, if you will, to get in front of people to invite. But the double-edged sword is that if you're too general and you don't have a specific headline, then odds are you're probably not going to attract too many people, because if you're like, hey, I help people do everything better, like, well, is this for me or not? Because, yeah, I want to do stuff better, but I'm just kind of glazing over that. So in other words, that's an online marketing platform to get people offline to a face-to-face event. And anything we do online, as I work with my clients, I always say, like, we've got to get really specific if we're doing stuff online, because there's just so much, competition to grab people's attention. And it's not just coaches, it's everybody. It's all advertising, it's everything. It's just regular social media posts. Like there's a lot online, so we've got to get really specific. But either way, it is still a great platform to, if you want to set an event up for the end of the week, it's like, get on meetup.com, start, pick, you got to create a headline for your group. You got to get as specific as possible. But you can go down to a Starbucks or Barnes & Noble or a Panera Bread and maybe you can get in front of 2 or 3 people in a couple days, And the reality is I say, and you might be thinking like, Jeff, it's so short, and when my mentor coaches, my mentoring clients hire me, and if this is the direction we end up going down, et cetera, and then, the first or that second call, and I'm saying, all right, let's set up a live event, and I'm going to walk you through it and talk you through everything, and they're like, what? They're like, you want me to set it up? And I'm like, yeah, and let's do it by the end of the week. And they're like, what do you mean by the end of the week? I'm like, yeah, look, at the end of the week. It's like, we just got to get you in front of people. And it's just like, where can we get you in front of people? Whether it's Meetup or something else, I teach them how to leverage their contacts a little bit, help them design an approach. But that's all you have to do. And the reason I want to share this on the call today is that the reason you only need for like a free 60 to 60-minute event, the reason you only need a couple days, probably at the most, to set up an event and get people to is because people know what they're doing today, tomorrow, the next day, probably this weekend, right? They know what they're doing. But if you're doing an event even next week or 2 weeks from now, unless the title of the event or the topic of the event is so compelling, then how are they going to know? They're not going to sign up for it, right? They're like, well, I don't know what I'm doing 2 weekends from now, or I might be doing this, and you know what I mean? So it's like they're not going to necessarily sign up for it, right? But they know what they're doing, a couple days from now. So basically, it's like they're either free or they're not. And if they're free, then it's like, okay, do I want to go to this event or not? Based on the topic, title, and description. And so it's a very easy decision. So, and you have to think about it for yourself, right? When you've signed up for things or done things, and whether it's things like this or just like even just like planning something for the weekend, right? It's like you either know, are we free or not, and how badly do we want to go to it based on what we see, and then you decide. But the whole point is that you typically don't decide until when? Like probably the day before, 2 days before, 3 days before at the most, right? So that's why I say when I'm talking about like a short time frame for these types of events, I don't want you to think like, oh my God, there's all this planning's involved and it's going to be hard to do. Like, no, like let's get going on this. So I wanted to give you an idea of kind of what I'm talking about with these events. I don't want you to complicate things. I don't want you to overthink things. I don't want you to think this is going to be a big marketing thing. It's like get on your computer, Microsoft Word or whatever the Apple equivalent is, right? And just create a little flyer, get some of your contacts, the people that leverage some of those people and say, hey, do you have a space, basement of churches, libraries, things like that, realtors places, like I said, and see if you can find a space that you can get. Ideally, you get it for free. And then, if you, like I said, the best thing to do is just find a place that already has the people. If not, just use Meetup and your own invitation to get some people to an event. The biggest thing about live events is I showed you the power of them from the beginning in terms of how it allows us to get clients. But the biggest thing is that no matter what you do, I want you speaking in front of people. We've got to be speaking in front of people. This is why I do my Tuesday live calls, right? It's not face-to-face live, but it's live, right? But if you're doing these live events, I want you to get in front of as many people as you can every single week. That's how your business is going to grow. And if that is frightening for you or scary for you or painful for you right now, well, I can't say anything other than, well, you just got to do it more to make it less painful, less scary, and more comfortable for you. You could coach, you can train. People are like, no, I'm gonna take Toastmasters, and I'm gonna learn how to do this, that, and it's just like, no, don't do that. Like, get in front of people and speak live. Like, that's how I did it. I was very uncomfortable, but I did it, and the more I did it, the more comfortable I became with it. And that's a matter of fact, is especially when you're talking around passionate topics that you're excited about, you can be excited about those things and allow your passion to come out. Most people don't allow their passion to come out, and especially with the topics when they're speaking, is they become too scripted, or they become like they plan it out too much. And here's the number one, I'll say this for what it's worth, the number one reason why people never get around to doing live events is because what they do is they do it in a reverse order. Is they're like, okay, let me think of a topic first, let me plan out the content next, and then once I plan out the content, then I can figure out where I'm going to speak. But guess what? It never gets to that point, and you know what happens is they never do the event. So it's always the reverse order. It's let me book the event first. Let me plan the event in terms of you got to pick a date, you got to pick a time, you got to get a location, and then it's either going to be I'm inviting to be the to the event, or I'm gonna do it somewhere with somebody that already has people, and I'm gonna show up. Once that's booked and it's confirmed, and you get people in the seats, or there's gonna be people in the seats, that's when you figure out the content and all that other stuff. And that's when even before the content is like book the event first, and come up with a title at that point when you're booking it with them. Figure out what they're looking for, if it's someone who's going to have you in, or if you're going to do your own event, date, time, location, and then, okay, what am I talking about? Just pick a title and a brief description and figure the rest out from there. But we've got to commit to it first. And that's the reverse order that I'm talking about, is most people do it the other way, and they plan it all out first, but it never gets around to fruition from there. And in terms of like delivering content, and this is coming from some of the questions we got, for the people that called in live, in terms of like using a PowerPoint, and I even had one of my mentoring clients ask me this yesterday because he did a live event this past weekend at a conference that he went to, and I would say there's not necessarily a more favorable or desired way in terms of delivering content? Meaning, do you use a PowerPoint? Do you use nothing at all? Do you have a handout? Do you have notes? Do you have index cards? Whatever. How about this? First and foremost, there's no right or wrong way to do it. What I would say and what I would consider is we've got to look at obviously the type of event you're having. And for these types of events, I'm going to keep it on this stuff where we're keeping it short, let's say 30 to 60 minutes. We got to use whatever's going to allow you to shine the most. So if you're freaking out because you're like, oh my God, I'm going to forget what I'm going to talk about and things like that, and you need something like a PowerPoint, you need something like notes or a handout or something like that, then use it, right? There's no wrong way to do it. The wrong way to do it is not use a tool or anything for that matter, and then just get in front of people and suck, right? Because the reverse of this whole thing is that, hey, set the live events up, and it's like, if we suck, we're not going to get clients, right? So, and you're probably thinking, well, yeah, Jeff, that's why I'm not doing this, because I think I suck, or I know I suck, or whatever those negative beliefs are in your head, right? And you know what? Maybe you're right, and maybe you even have evidence that you suck because you did your first event or whatever, and it was a flop, and you whatever you wet your pants and you go, I don't know, right? I'm just making stuff up, but either way. And it was a flop, and you're like, oh my God, I can't do this, I'm horrible at it. But either way, the point is that we got this business as a coach, you've got to be speaking in front of people somehow. If it's not face-to-face, it's got to be virtual, right? And if it's not live, it's got to be recorded and put out there. If you never speak in front of people, you're never going to have a coaching business. And I will stand behind that statement 100%. You've got to be able to speak in front of people. And maybe it's not even your own content. Maybe you interview people and you get your content from everybody else and you put it together, but you've still got to be able to communicate that to people. So the reality is that we've got to learn how to do that stuff. So even if you feel like you suck, that's okay, because you're going to do another event and you're going to suck a little bit less, right? So going back to how we deliver this is just whatever way allows you to suck the least. Said differently, I'm just joking a little bit, right? But is to, shine and show your energy and your passion. That's why I don't recommend and I'm not against like Toastmasters and things like that, but that's why I don't necessarily recommend it, is because I don't want you to be all formal, and I don't want you to get there like you see TED Talks and things like that. I just want you to get up there and speak. I want you to speak. I don't care if it's grammatically correct and it's all perfect and there's dramatic pauses and you don't have like but and and all those words in there. It's like, so what? I'm like, I want you to get out there and speak and show me your passion and show your knowledge and expertise in an area, and show that you care and show that you're a human being, and show them that you're a husband, a wife, a dad, a mother, a father, on top of all this other stuff, so they can relate to you. And you don't have to be perfect in the sense that, oh, I got my whole life together and I'm always doing well. And it's like, show them that you have your highs and you've had successes, and I've also had really big lows too, and everywhere in between, because I'm a human being. And some days I wake up and the world sucks, and some days I wake up and the world couldn't be better, right? Because that's what life is, and no one's immune to that. And just show them that you're a real person, but also show them how you can help them, not by telling them how you can help them, but by educating them around that. And that's what I'll say in terms of delivering your message, and how you go about that delivery is all that matters. But the reality is that where I'm going to come to as I start to wrap up, this information around live events is, getting to the live events. I talked about all that stuff and, delivering the information. And don't worry about format too much. Don't worry about a lot of those things. I mean, you want to plan some of that stuff out, especially if it's going to make you feel better around, what's coming next. But I would plan that stuff to the point where it makes you feel comfortable. Meaning, if you had the PowerPoint, if you had the notes, if you planned, okay, I'm going to do 5 to 7 minutes of an introduction, I'm going to tell my story, and then 10 to 12 minutes of I'm going to open up with this story, and then I'm going to break into a discussion, and then for this, and you break it all out like that, right? And I'd recommend that, especially in the beginning, so you have something of a format. But the best live events, right? The best live events, and here's the key: live. The definition of live is that it's in the moment. It's right now. It's not pre-recorded or pre-planned necessarily. It's like, yeah, we have a script. We know what we want to say. We know what we want to get across, but make sure you have the live element to it, right? The live element is like this call. I have no idea what I'm going to say when I'm coming to these calls. And this is just having done this for a while. I know I can do this, and it leverages my element of being in that moment. and it extracts my passion and all that good stuff, right? But the point is it's live. If I did this call another time, next week, and I had the same topic, it would sound it was similar, but there'd be a lot of different pieces to it, and I might be saying some things that I'm not saying now, and I might make different jokes or different whatever, and it's live. So I want to make sure no matter what you're delivering in that event, again, that it leverages you as a person, not only as a professional, but also as a human being in your life and as a real person with highs and lows. But also I want you to have the live element in there, because if you miss out on the live element, what's going to happen is, and this is from experience, and I've done this before. I was so into my script and my PowerPoint and into, okay, getting through this so I can get to this, so I can get to that I was missing out on what was happening live in front of me. Meaning I was missing out on people. Right? I was missing out on their reactions and what they were doing and what they were talking with each other, or writing notes on, or taking pictures of a slide, or raising a hand, or like starting to tear up, or get angry or something, right? And in a response to what I was teaching or talking about. And as I began to relax more and be more in the moment, I relied less on the agenda. And of course, you have some agenda to get through what you're going to get through. But then I would pause and I would stop and I would take note and say, hey, I noticed you're writing a lot. I'm just curious, what's so impactful for you right now? What are you connecting with? Or I saw the two of you talking back there, and I'm not being a teacher trying to say, hey, what are you talking in the classroom? I'm actually curious to what it is that you guys are sharing with each other. And maybe it's just what you're having for lunch, but I was wondering if it related to what we were talking about. And if anything, it was a comedic moment and everyone laughed. And at times I've done that and people are like, no, we actually were just talking about what we're having for lunch. And I'm like, oh, I'm glad the information is so riveting that you want to talk about that. And people laugh and I move on, right? But again, it shows humor. It shows I can be in the moment. See, it all leverages to that live event. And that's where when you can be in that space. And again, like I said, I've done it for 15 years, so I can go there. Trust me, it was not like that in the beginning. That's why I wanted to share some of those things. Is like I was in that space where I was so rigid and someone would have a hand up and I just wouldn't answer it. I'd be like, no, we'll talk to that later, because I was so freaking nervous of what they might ask me and that I wouldn't be able to answer it, that I just ignored questions sometimes. And what it did is I could still give a good experience, but it was somewhat mechanical and there was some resistance there. So I didn't allow people to connect the level with which I could. And that's why I want you to be able to get into that space where you can be in that moment. Because the number one thing is at the end of what we do, we want to make sure we can have some type of a call to action. And you've heard, call to action. And this is the part where, the close, if you will, where, even at the end of a complimentary session where it's like we ask for business, this is the selling aspect that can make people uncomfortable. And at events, I don't recommend selling necessarily. Yeah, if you've got a book, or absolutely, yeah, let people know if you've got a book and it's available. If you've got a table in the back of the room or something like that. But in terms of coaching, I wouldn't be throwing out complimentary sessions or anything like that. What I would be doing is I would having a free offer. So in other words, if you have a web presence, which at some point you would. But if you have a web presence, you definitely want to have not only that headline that I was talking about, helping who with what specifically, you need to make sure you have some type of a free offer. People call it a lead magnet. I mentioned at the beginning of my call when I said go to sellingcoaching.com, and I've got a great resource for you on the homepage called the Ultimate Startup Guide for New Coaches. I bribe you with my dog, blah, 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 right? That's my free offer. In other words, when people get that great resource, when coaches sign up for that, they enter their name and email address. Not only do they get that, but they're on my email community now. And that's a huge thing. This is like our email community, or people call it an email list. I like to call it an email community because it's my community where I communicate with them. We build a community and a relationship that way. But they're on that community. That is my business, right? My email list is my business. It's my way of interacting with those people. And so that's very important. So you can have that free offer not only for your website, but when you're talking to those people, you can offer that to them. You can say at the end, whether you're using a PowerPoint or whatever, you can say, listen, I have a great resource available for you, Ultimate Startup Guide for New Coaches. It's a fantastic blah, 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 right? And I would go through my little thing. And then I would just want to make sure we've got to get a way of getting emails, names and emails, right? So there's lots of different ways you can do it. What I wouldn't suggest is just having a registration sheet that, everyone registered for it. Again, if that's the one way you can get it, that's fine. But what's happening with that is now you're getting everyone's name and emails. And I used to think that was awesome. Trust me, I used to do that as well. But as I learned, now what happened was I would be getting everyone's information, and yeah, of course they were interested because they were there, but depending on the type of event, if it was an event where I was coming into and they were like invited to be there, like an office or something like that, not everyone was like, oh my God, I want to go to this event. They're there because I work there or whatever, right? So not everyone is super and uber interested in what I'm doing in terms of this free offer of this ultimate startup guide for new coaches or whatever your free offer is, right? So when you offer something like that and they raise their hands and they give you their name and their email address, that's a great way of weeding out. Let's say there's 50 people, maybe you get 20 of them. That would be great if you did that. That's a pretty good percentage. Then now you're getting those 20 people. Now I follow up with those people because they raised their hand. They said, yes, your information is great. I definitely want more. Sometimes if you do a PowerPoint, turn that into a PDF. I've done PowerPoints before. I've turned it into a PDF. And I would give that away as a free resource. Because what I learned from live events is everyone's sitting there with their camera, their smartphones. As this evolved, now we have smartphones, and everyone's taking pictures of the slides that I've got up there, and pictures that they're never going to use ever, right? But the point is they're taking pictures of this stuff, or they're trying to frantically write down some of the information on the slides. Which, by the way, what I learned is that over time, if you've got that much written on a slide that people is taking pictures of it or writing stuff down from a slide, you've got way too much information on the slide. Ideally, a slide is just a picture with a word or a phrase at the most that jogs your memory of a story or what you're going to be talking about or reinforces a point through imagery and things like that. That's really a great way of using PowerPoint. But either way, I can use that. I can turn that into a PDF. I can have the notes if you scripted it out or things like that. Maybe that becomes your free resource. Turn that into a PDF and give that away. So when we get their names and emails, that's when we can reach out to them afterwards. We reach out to them afterwards, and that's where we can be like, hey, so glad you came to the event. Curious, maybe what was your motivation for attending? If it was an event that you sponsored, if you will, if it was an event that they were there, you can ask, what was your number one takeaway, right? Just like asking these calls, we'll stop and we'll say, hey, what was your number one takeaway? I start to want to understand what people are thinking and where the value was for them, and then that can follow up into additional conversation, which then in turn, that follow-up is what can lead to the coaching clients, right? But I want to stress, I spent all the time prior to that, so we can start to understand that where the power is leading up to that end. Now, obviously, it's another whole call going into what happens after the event, but if you do that all right and you get their information and at least start to follow up with them, that's where we can begin to create those conversations which can lead to coaching clients. And those conversations, like I said, from live events can start face-to-face right after the event. That's a powerful piece of that.